Perfectionism. On the surface, it looks noble, even virtuous. It's often seen as discipline, a dedication to excellence, or a high moral compass. Society loves to applaud people who aim high and refuse to settle for anything less than the best. But what if all that applause is masking something else entirely? What if behind this obsession with getting everything just right, there's not strength, but fear? Not fear of failure, at least not only that, but fear of something much more intimidating, our own power. Carl Gustav Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist and one of the founding voices in analytical psychology, believed perfectionism isn't always what it seems. In fact, he saw it as a clever form of self-sabotage. According to Jung, our minds create what he called personas, masks we wear to protect ourselves from exposing the parts of us we're afraid of. And sometimes perfectionism is that mask. It's a spotless, shiny facade that doesn't just protect us from judgment from others, it protects us from the responsibility that comes with owning our full potential. Think about it. How many times have you heard someone say they're going to write a book, launch a business, change careers, or finally put themselves out there? They do all the prep. They read the books, take the courses, refine their plans, but they never actually start. There's always something to tweak, fix, improve, something that's not quite good enough. But is it really about quality, or is it about fear? Jung suggested that perfectionism isn't about chasing greatness. It's a clever way to avoid confronting it, because success, real success, comes with an uncomfortable realization you could have done it sooner. You could have gone further. You could have been more. And that truth stings. So instead of acting, the perfectionist stays in motion without movement. They're always working, always adjusting, always almost ready. It looks productive, but it's a beautiful kind of paralysis. Because as long as they're perfecting something, they never have to ask the hardest question of all. What am I truly capable of? That answer is huge, and for many it's terrifying. Because recognizing your own potential means coming to terms with time, lost chances missed, and the weight of carrying something powerful inside you that the world hasn't seen yet. Jung believed that what he called the shadow, that unconscious part of our psyche that stores repressed desires, fears, and yes, even our untapped potential, often holds our greatest strengths. And the longer we hide from it, the more we create convincing excuses for not showing up in the world. Perfectionism is one of the most acceptable masks to wear. You can tell people you're just waiting to get it right. You can say you're being careful, methodical, even noble, and nobody questions it, because perfectionism looks responsible. But deep down, what if the real truth is, I'm scared of what I might become? That's the uncomfortable thesis of this video. That perfectionism isn't about high standards, it's about staying small, staying safe, staying hidden. It's about avoiding the discomfort of becoming who you really are. So we're going to take a deep dive into Jung's ideas, into the concept of the shadow and the psychological patterns that keep us locked in this loop. We'll explore how this elegant prison, this obsession with perfection, might be keeping you from the freedom you're searching for. Because maybe the real question isn't, why do you want to be perfect? Maybe it's, what are you trying to avoid discovering about yourself? According to Jung, perfectionism isn't just a detail-obsessed trait, it's a complex psychological defense. It protects the ego from parts of ourselves we're not ready to face, and ironically, what we're often hiding from is our own strength. You see, human beings live in constant tension between the conscious and the unconscious, between the part of us that wants to be seen and admired and the part that fears being truly known. Perfectionism sits right at the edge of that tension. It feeds the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted, respected, admired. For the perfectionist, that persona becomes sacred. It has to be spotless. Because if they're seen as anything less than meticulous, hard-working, or precise, they fear the whole thing might crumble. But here's the paradox. The very mask they use to protect themselves also keeps them from being free. Behind that mask lives what Jung called the shadow. And that shadow isn't just filled with flaws or regrets. It holds potential, desire, creativity, power, everything we've pushed down, not because it's bad, but because it's too much for the ego to handle. And that's where things get really interesting. Let's go deeper into the shadow. In Jungian psychology, the shadow isn't just a dumping ground for your mistakes and shame. It's where you've hidden parts of yourself that were once powerful, vibrant, and real, but inconvenient. Qualities that didn't fit the image you thought you had to present. And for many perfectionists, it's not just the fear of flaws hiding in the shadow, it's the fear of brilliance. Perfectionism becomes the perfect cover. On the outside, you're not ready. You just want to get it right. You're being responsible. But under the surface, there's a fear. What happens if I succeed? What happens if I actually put myself out there and people see me? Not as I've crafted myself to be, but as I really am. Let's say someone wants to start a business. They spend years researching, planning, preparing. They'll tell you they're learning about marketing, fine-tuning their strategy, building capital. It all sounds good. It sounds smart. But often there's something else underneath that sounds more like this. What if I succeed and I have to keep going? What if people expect things from me? What if I can't hide anymore? Because here's the thing, when you succeed, everything changes. More eyes are on you, more responsibility comes your way. The stakes rise. You're no longer anonymous or invisible. You become someone people look to. That can be just as frightening, if not more so, than failing. Perfectionism in this sense is a brilliant alibi. It keeps you from falling sure, but it also keeps you from flying. Jung understood that the psyche doesn't tolerate stagnation. When you don't act, when your energy isn't directed outward into creating, building, sharing, it turns inward. And that's when it becomes something else: anxiety, overthinking, self-doubt. That gnawing feeling of, I should be doing more, even though you can't seem to take the leap. This is why many perfectionists live in a constant state of tension. There's a huge force inside them, a drive, a talent, a voice trying to break out. But the mask, the persona, won't allow it. Because the persona says, you have to be flawless, you have to be admired, you can't mess up. So all that raw energy, the kind that could have built something amazing, gets trapped. And eventually it turns toxic. Jung believed that within the shadow lies life force. Not just darkness, not just fear, but creative fire. Talents that never got expressed. Ideas that were dismissed. Confidence that got buried because it didn't feel safe to shine. And the longer those things stay locked up, the more pressure they build. That pressure starts to seep into daily life. A simple email takes an hour to write. A conversation feels high stakes. A passion project never leaves the notebook. Relationships get sabotaged before they begin. Every little thing becomes a performance, a test to be passed. It's not just a fear of getting it wrong, it's a fear of getting it right and not knowing what to do with the ripple effects of success. The truth is, perfectionism can disguise itself as logic, as planning, as being careful, but it's often just fear wearing a tailored suit. And the longer someone stays stuck in this loop, the more frustrated, anxious, and unfulfilled they become. But here's the cost that's rarely talked about. When perfectionism takes over, it drains not just your time, but your vitality. The joy of doing, of creating, of trying gets lost. Life becomes a checklist of standards that never feel met. You look successful on the outside, but inside something feels off. You feel behind, like you've spent years waiting to start the life you know you're meant for. And the scariest part, the longer you wait, the harder it gets to admit what you're really afraid of. Jung pointed out that repressing the shadow doesn't make it go away, it gives it power. The more you hide from what's inside you, especially your greatness, the more it starts influencing your decisions from the dark. That's why people sometimes sabotage their own projects, quit just before something takes off, or make excuses so convincing even they believe them. Because if they succeed, if they shine, there's no more hiding, no more masks, no more pretending they're still figuring things out. So ask yourself, what if the thing you're scared of isn't failing, but becoming who you really are? In the next section, we're going to unpack what that power actually is, the one that hides in your shadow and shapes your life behind the scenes. What does it look like to confront it, to own it, and most of all, to live it? So let's finally talk about it. What is this mysterious inner power that perfectionists seem to fear? What is it that lies dormant in the shadow, quietly shaping your choices, keeping you in preparation mode, convincing you to wait just a little longer before you begin? Carl Jung didn't see this power as something mystical or unattainable. For him, it was something real, raw, and deeply personal. He believed that every human being carries within them a unique spark, a calling to become who they truly are. He called this process individuation. It's not about becoming perfect, it's about becoming whole. And that's where the fear kicks in. Because stepping into your power doesn't just mean stepping into success, it also means stepping into discomfort, into responsibility, into visibility. It means leaving behind the small, neat version of yourself that you've spent years curating and embracing the messy, extraordinary version that's always been waiting underneath. Perfectionism in this light isn't the pursuit of excellence, it's a defense against growth. Jung observed that most people live with a huge split between what the ego wants, the things we think we want, and what the self demands, which is a deeper, often more inconvenient truth. The self pushes you toward growth, toward integration, toward becoming someone who can no longer hide. And that's why perfectionism feels so safe. It keeps the self at bay. As long as you're editing, tweaking, preparing, you don't have to commit. You don't have to answer the call. But here's the painful truth. Life doesn't wait for you to feel ready. The perfect moment never comes. And the longer you stay in hiding, the more you feel that subtle ache, that sense of misalignment, of living a life just a few degrees off from where you're meant to be. Jung said suffering arises not from a difficult life, but from living a life that is not your own. And perfectionism is one of the most socially accepted ways to do exactly that, to live a life that looks good but doesn't feel like yours. So, how do you begin to break this cycle? Let's get practical. Here are a few tools, not theoretical ideas, but real, tangible practices you can start today to move from paralysis to action. 1. Act before you're ready. Don't wait for the feeling of certainty. It won't come. Start before you feel qualified. Publish the blog post. Launch the website. Record the video. You'll never feel ready. You become ready through doing. 2. Time box your preparation. Set a short deadline for planning and then stick to it. Give yourself 48 hours to draft a plan, then take action even if it's messy. Done is better than perfect. 3. Write down the fear. When you find yourself stuck, ask, what am I actually afraid of? Not the surface fear, but the real one. Fear of judgment, fear of success, fear of change, getting honest strips, fear of its power. 4. Allow imperfection on purpose. Intentionally do something good enough. Send the email with a typo. Post the video with the imperfect lighting. Train your nervous system to realize the world doesn't collapse when you're imperfect. 5. Celebrate small imperfect wins. Each time you take action despite fear, notice it, mark it, acknowledge it as a victory. You're building new neural pathways. Each one gets you closer to freedom. Because that's the real goal, right? Not perfection, freedom. Freedom to create, to speak to, lead to live. Freedom to stop hiding behind improvement and finally become. Here's the truth. You don't have to fix yourself before you begin. You don't have to heal every wound or learn everything or be flawless. You only have to start. Your gifts weren't meant to stay locked in a notebook or buried under fear. They were meant to move through you, even clumsily, into the world. So ask yourself, what's the thing you've been putting off in the name of perfecting? The book, the business, the conversation, the art, the change. Drop it in the comments, shine a light on it, and remember you're not alone. There's a whole community of people just like you on the edge of something big, wrestling with fear, but choosing to act anyway. And if this video resonated, I invite you to keep watching. There's more insights, more tools, more truth, because this isn't just about perfectionism. It's about liberation. It's about becoming who you were always meant to be, flaws, brilliance, and all. Outro music fades in. Thanks for being here. Let's keep going together.